a fireside chat with none other than Mr. Farhan Ahmad, the Group CEO of PayNet. Joining him is Mr. Vincent Fong from Fintech News Malaysia, who will be interviewing him of Everything Payment Summit.
Thank you, TV. I was nice to you earlier, so the introduction is nice. Otherwise, I don't know if I have a different description, but thanks for the kind introduction. Of course, thanks to the organizer for inviting me today. When I came here at first, I was wondering if I was still in Malaysia, because never in my life of attending events in Malaysia, I see everyone so early. I'm like, is this still Malaysia? But yeah, good on you guys for showing up early. You guys have also done a very good job in filling up the room. I have people calling me, Vince, can I get some tickets? It's full. I'm glad you guys are not charging for this. Otherwise, there might be scalpers like Coldplay. I don't know if Fahmi is going to drop you a call or anything. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to keep this conversation fairly casual and maybe pepper in a few tough questions here and there. Now, of course, my name is Vincent. I'm from Fintech News Malaysia, for those of you who don't know me. And to my right, of course, is Farhan, the Group CEO of PayNet. Now, Farhan has had 5 years of experience in the US, in the UK. He's founded 4 startups, including one named Bento, which you sold to the 5th largest bank in the US. Well done on that. So maybe we'll start with why you chose to come down to Malaysia, why you chose to come down to PayNet, because the startup life is quite different, right? And you come to Malaysia, you come to PayNet, it's quite a structured organization, it's quite a large enterprise-style organization. So why Malaysia, why PayNet?
Yeah, is this working? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us and for doing this conversation. Thank you all for coming. This is our first attempt at creating some great fintech momentum in the country, and we wanted to do it with a whole week of events. We have a whole week of events planned. This summit, showcasing, it's really about all of you here and in the country who are doing amazing things. And we wanted to put a spotlight and showcase everybody who's doing these things in the country. So, thank you first of all for coming for our very first ever, and hopefully a repeated thing, PayNet Digital Payments Week event. To answer your question, I mean, obviously we were both chosen for this panel because of our hair. I mean, that was a key defining factor for this one.
Or lack thereof.
Whatever. So the Malaysia story is interesting because everybody always asks me, what was the journey to come from a startup to? It's not a natural step, right? You do 3 or 4 startups when you go to a national payment system. That's not what most people think the journey goes like. And that actually wasn't the story here either. I just wanted to come to Malaysia. I wanted to come to Asia, and for a variety of reasons, I had a long spreadsheet, and we went through it, and we said Malaysia is the place we want to go to. And we've never lived here, we've never worked here, done anything, but we put the pen in Malaysia and said that's where we're going to go. And the PayNet story kind of became a little bit coincidental, and I honestly wasn't looking to do anything. To be very, very, very frank, I wasn't looking to work. I wasn't looking just to come and play some golf and enjoy life. And but then I heard the story of PayNet and the mission of PayNet. And the only and the entire reason of me coming and doing this is because it is an amazingly ambitious, profoundly impactful mission for the country. What PayNet does. There's very few places where there is so much national enthusiasm and a technology stack that's actually ready to serve that enthusiasm, to really bring economic prosperity to the far reaches of the country. And I thought to myself, I've done all these commercial things, and wouldn't it be amazing to do something that's actually for the public good, and that really, really elevates the lives of everybody in the country. And I don't think there's another place really that can do this better than what we can do with PayNet.
I mean, it's really crucial, right? What's more important in business than getting paid? So to enable that payment is really a key economic driver as well. Now, I've also interacted with PayNet for quite a number of years, and I have to say the vibe with PayNet is quite different. Your predecessor, Peter, was, of course, very crucial in setting up the essential infrastructure for the nation to be able to make seamless payments and whatnot. When you came in, I think I sense a more startup kind of vibe. It's more energetic and it's a little bit different. I guess some of it is kind of guided by your background building a few startups, right? So I just wonder, how much of this experience is shaping the way you lead and manage PayNet at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can go a little bit into the history of my startup experience and how that influences decision making in general, right? Because they're not two different worlds, right? It's just lessons learned from different parts. I've worked for the largest bank in the world, and I've worked for built startup, which is the smallest company in the world. So I think you look at the spectrum and you say there's more similarities and differences in certainly in ideology. But if you bear with me, I'll take a little bit of time. Go for it. Talk about that, right? And the journey. So many big things that I've learned. The first startup I joined a company called LifeMinders, and I was very young and very stupid. I'm still stupid, but not as stupid as that. So there was a little bit of growing in that journey, but it was very stupid at that time, and the company was a steep growth like this from zero to we went public and the first year, and we were a $2 billion company, US dollar company, in no time, and we did nothing. That was amazing. We did almost nothing, and it was a very valuable lesson that right time, right place matters. Timing matters. It's not always about just doing the work and doing the right things. It was the .com era, if anybody wants to guess, and all you had to do was put the words .com at the end of your business, and it did really well. And actually spurred millionaires all over, all the people that we think are doing amazing things, whether it's Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all these people were birthed from those areas. But those companies that everybody built and made millions from are all dead. But the power carried through. But anyway, that was a good lesson learned. So I said I'm going to leave that. It wasn't very fulfilling, and went out to California and built what is now called Buy Now, Pay Later, but there was no name for it. We were the first company in the world to basically give credit, short-term credit to people online for e-commerce payments, and that's Buy Now, Pay Later. That was a phenomenal company. So we were also the very first company in the world to ever do payment tokenization, both with merchants and consumers. Even consumers did not know their account numbers, and it's fully tokenized. And that was probably one of the best things I've ever built. But wrong time, wrong place. Because in 2001, all of our customers died. So we had an amazing product, an amazing solution, technology that's still maybe 20 years ahead of its time, but no customers. They were all dead. So another precious lesson. One was wrong time, wrong place. Those are very important. And we had the best investors in the world. That if you ever look up the
I guess they don't really like that investor.
Fix the mic. I'll use this, and if you get an echo, I'll move back. But the two most famous investors of all time, from Sequoia and Excel, and they were both on my board. And as soon as things started to go down, they all left, and they put new board members on. And everybody who was my best friend left, and new people came in. And the lesson learned was, good times are easy and bad times are very hard. Second lesson was, the world can change around you, so you better always control your destiny. Which means it's good and happy to talk about plan A, but you're never going to just end up with plan A. You have to have not just plan B, but plan C and plan D, right? So from that point on, everything I've ever done, there's 4 plans. The happy path, and when catastrophe happens path, right? And that lesson continues to serve everything. We sold that company, and that's still actually doing quite well. And I'll skip some long in the middle stuff, but I'll get to the last one. So the last one was Bento, and Bento was the culmination of all the lessons learned. And I wanted to prove to everybody who said to me it's not possible that we can build an incredibly transparent and ethical bank that is completely value-driven. Our services were charged as a fee percentage of the value that we create for you. And it was math. There was no charges. And our mantra was, we are 10 times more expensive than our closest competitor. More expensive, not cheaper, right? But that meant, because I was only charging about 10% of the value we create for you, that we are adding 100 times more value than the next competitor, which happened to be American Express in this journey. And our growth was like this, and everybody was willing to pay us 10 times the fee because it was very obvious that we created the value. So that was lesson number 3, right? Your value has to be indisputable and obvious in a second. If it takes you 5 minutes to explain your value, there is no value. It has to be obvious. Right? These are lessons that I'm learning through. Now, from that thing, when we sold Bento, and it was kind of a fulfillment of that ideal that I could do this, there are a few more lessons I'll share more for the fintechs in this room and the companies who want to start up things is the journey to a startup thing is a very let me just say the kind words are, it's not an intelligent path, right? Because 99% of startups fail. So it's an emotional path. And when you're doing something with emotion, the number one thing I realized you have to do is you have to have 100% conviction. 100% conviction and passion behind what you're doing. And that applies to everything that I do. So even for PayNet, I have 100% conviction. We can change things. So you have to have that. Second, when you have 100% conviction, you have to lay out a trajectory. As everybody says, there's a vision. Of course, you have to have a vision. You have to have a vision for where you want to go. But the one thing I can tell you about visions are, they're always wrong. No company has ever says, I had this vision when I first started, and then that's where they ended up. Not Google, not Apple, not Amazon, not PayPal, not whatever company you want to name that we use every day. It's never that way. So more important than a vision is a trajectory. Companies don't land. Companies travel through a trajectory. And that trajectory is very crucial. But the trajectory does not pay off the same way. It's just a trajectory and a path. And so the lesson very important is make sure you know the trajectory you want to follow. And that you know that when you're deviating from your trajectory, what's causing it. And that's, I think, more important than vision. Third, whatever you're doing, sell. Talk to the customer. If you can't sell, you don't know the product or the company, right? So as a startup, right, I had to sell the first customer. That told me that at least one person is willing to buy and pay for something. Then I said, I want to find 10 more like this. Now I know one customer, I know the pitch, I know what worked. So I find 10 more of those, and I had to sell the first 10 myself. When I sold 10, now I have a story and a playbook. I have a set of customer requirements, what customer looks like, and I had a pitch. And now I had a vertical. And now I could say, I'm going to sell this vertical and nothing else, not get distracted by going wide and all over the place. So the lesson learned there is focus. Narrow, deep focus will always be wide view disruptive. Always. 100% of the time. So do a couple of things, do it well. There's 2 more points I'll make and then I'll stop yapping about this. Second to last point is, in everything, whether it's life or work or relationships, personal or business, 20% of what we do creates 80% of the outcomes. We say it, but we don't really mean it. Because in most of our lives, when we come into the office, there's a lot of work lying there. At any given day, no matter what you do, 20% of it matters, 80% of it does not matter. Almost guaranteed, right? But what will we all do first when we come in? We'll do the 80% of the work that doesn't matter. Because it's always the easy stuff. Right? The 20% is hard, so we wait and we leave it for the end of the day. And then we go, oh, I'm exhausted. It's 7 p.m. I've got to go see family. It's too much work. I'm complaining. And the simple thing is stop doing the 80%. So I don't say, there's a saying called work smarter, not harder. But if you're doing something really meaningful, actually the phrase is work smarter and harder. So first, spend all your effort to figure out the 20% that makes a difference. And then spend more time perfecting that 20% than anybody else on the planet. And if you just do those 2 things, unbeatable, right? But the key is to identify the 20% with discipline and only do that. And live with the consequences of not doing 80%. And take the beating for it. Go get it done. And the last thing, and again, this all applies to startups and what I'm doing now, is there's only 3 people who are looking out for you in any case. your family, your team, your investors or your board. Nobody else. Everybody is there with you in good times, not there with you for bad times. There's only 3 people who are vested in your success. Make sure you nurture that relationship, build that village. Thank everybody back for support, because it's a very, very tough journey to do tough things. There's a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And I won't give the whole thing away, but the book is about hard things and hard things. Right? It's not a secret, it's in the title, right? But big things and difficult things are very, very hard to do. I knew the Google founders when they were starting up, and they failed many times, and they were selling the company for a couple of $1 million. And they couldn't find a buyer, so they had to do it. And you know what Google is now. I knew the PayPal founders when our offices were next to each other, and they were failing. There was no buyers, and they had to keep doing it, and they did it. Hard things are hard things, and it's very, very tough. So make sure the family and the village around you is very important. So this is kind of my things. I think the lens I want to bring to PayNet and to the country is this mindset shift. Nobody's going to do stuff for us. We have to do it. Malaysia is a phenomenal country with possibly more potential than I see anywhere else in the region. I spent the last week in India. We have everything that they have. We have amazing potential. We just need to unlock ourselves to do it.
And I think some of the points you brought up would resonate very well with the startups over here, right? Talking about right time, right place. And think if you founded your BNPL startup maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it's probably going to be valued at a few $100 million by now. And to your point about trajectory, I think there are some famous examples we can think of, right? Sometimes you set out a vision to do something, and then the market wants a very different thing. I see some younger people in this room. So I don't know how many of you know the story of how YouTube or Instagram is founded. So, like, for example, YouTube was founded as a dating site, right? People upload their video and then it's like, hey, I'm Vincent, this is why you should date me. And they found out nobody really wants that, but the video software is good.
Not personal.
I can't. So, so, a lot of times we need to pivot, we need to rethink back about where we're going. And you brought up a point about focusing on the 20% that really matters, right? And really perfecting that 20%. So I guess my follow-up question to you, what is your long-term vision for PayNet? What is that 20% that you're going to focus on as the new CEO of PayNet?
Okay, this is also a slightly longer answer, but I will give it. Because this is important. This is the PayNet strategy, right? You're asking me what the strategy is for PayNet, and the trajectory is for PayNet. So it's simple, right? We basically have a 3-legged stool, a 3-tier strategy. PayNet, just to give you some context, right? PayNet processes about over $5 trillion worth of payments every year. That is 15 times the GDP of Malaysia. Yeah. So it's a lot of money. So the first part of the strategy has to be to make sure our foundation, our bedrock, is infallible, right? It has to be perfect. So the first part of the strategy is to strengthen the foundation. And there's many parts of it. There's people, there's values, there's culture, there's lots of foundational stuff, but I'll focus on the technology part. Right? We have a platform, and there's only 2 reasons for a domestic network to exist in any country. Only 2 reasons. Sovereignty and lower cost of payments for the participants. Yeah. So PayNet has an amazing engine, but it's not sovereign to the country. It's run on third-party vendors. And because it's third-party vendors, it's expensive because we pay them high fees. Yeah. So step 1 is for the foundation is bring that in-house. Make it owned by Malaysia. And then much, much cheaper for all of our participants. So that's the bedrock of stable the foundation. Second, upskill our core capabilities. So we have Do It Now, which is 5th fastest growing real-time system in the world. But it can be much, much better. It's the usability of it, the user experiences here are not very good. So we have to make it much better. We can make it easier for everybody to join in the system. It might take us When I learn how long it takes us to onboard a participant, I will apologize to everybody who's tried up front. We're going to change all that stuff, right? We have to make our system easy to work with. There's other products, open data. Open data, without open data, we can't progress. So we have to do it. So that's called PayNet Connect. We're working on that. We're going to build a series of utilities, transit systems, toll systems, a bunch of things to help make our products part of the daily fabric, but in a much easier to absorb way. That's just what we call upskilling our core system, things that we already have and we upskill them. And then the third one is value-added services. Really, how do we make our services much more easier for participants to bring to the market? Because we don't bring anything to the market. All of you and everybody else who's in the industry are doing all the amazing work to bring it to market. We are just hopefully the helpful step ladder for you, right? So how do we make that ladder more valuable? So there's things like, since I came here, I heard the number one issue in Malaysia was fraud and risk. Okay, so we're working on that. PayNet Secure is a big initiative for us to significantly impact both, reduce the amount of fraud, and if fraud does happen, improve our ability to recover the fraud, to make people feel more safe and protected. That's a massive initiative. It's a 5-year journey to do that, right? Another one is PayNet Authenticate, which is National Digital ID for financial services. Every country who's progressed in this journey has a national identifier. We don't have one, so we'll build one. Right? I won't go into much more because there's other stuff around small businesses and stuff, but the last one that I really want to stress, which is why we're doing this whole thing, is the propulsion of growth is going to come from fintechs. In every geography this has happened, it's come from the tech industry in partnership with the banking industry. Not solo. It's not a competition, it's a partnership. But that ecosystem, that system does not exist, as far as I can tell, in Malaysia. There are some fintechs, not that many, but a few, and they're in direct competition with the banks. And both parties are just too focused on each other and not on the consumer, right? And I think it is something that PayNet can help with. Our job is going to be help to say, no, you work together. Banks are good at certain things. Tech companies are good at certain things. The 1 + 1 there is equals to 3. And that is part of our strategy of what we want to unlock, which is why a year ago at a PayNet function, you would have seen suits and ties, and now you're seeing t-shirts and silly quotes. It's just an expression to say we want to embrace a little bit of a different reality and really empower the tech industry heavily and find a way for them to partner with the banking industry to bring great products out. And that's kind of a little bit of the strategy. But this is the 20%. It's about 9 things. That's in our strategy document. It's very much available everywhere. That is the 20%.
It's a huge 20%, by the way. I can't even imagine what the
rest.
It's 100%. What's the rest of the 80% is? There are certain very pertinent points you brought up that I want to circle back to slightly later. But before we do that, let's take a second to reflect on how we're doing and how we compare to our neighbors and see if we're at par with some of our neighbors, right? So I have some stats over here. I said I'll pepper in some tough questions. So in Indonesia, the QR acceptance is at 22 million by the merchants. Their population is around 270 million. And Thailand is about 7 million acceptance points for QR. Their population is about 70 million. While Malaysia, we have picked up quite a bit from 1.1 to 1.6 last year. The ratio is still quite low compared to some of our neighbors. How do we compare in QR adoption and other areas of payments infrastructure and ecosystem compared to our neighbors? And how do we catch up with some aspects like QR payments?
So I'll dig into this a little bit more detail with some numbers tomorrow. This was kind of the topic, but I think I've seen that journey in other countries, right? The first, there's a few shocking things when I discovered here. One was when I went to a place to make a payment. Everywhere I went, I saw 8 QR plackets. You won't find that in Thailand or Indonesia or India or anywhere else because it is illegal. It is regulated. You cannot do it, right? And without that, there's customer confusion. With customer confusion means they don't use it. If they don't use it, why would a merchant have it? Yeah. Second thing, in a few of those places, there is either zero MDR or some kind of regulation around price control for small merchants. That's a key driver as well. Third, very importantly, is tools and services and benefits for merchants. Right? I did this exercise, maybe it's outdated, but I looked at lots of different providers of services and I looked at what they were offering in their collateral. What I could not find in any collateral was, what's the benefit for anybody to do e-payments? I found how to do it, how to protect fraud, how to do this. I found all these things and why should you do it in the pricing. I never found anybody explaining why. What's the benefit? So what is the benefit of e-payments to a nasi lemak vendor in the outskirts of Terengganu, right? What is the benefit? How do we quantify it? How do we make their lives easier in any way? And I think that thought process is not here. But when I go to India, I was there last week, all week. It's instantly obvious. The value prop is just coming out at you, right? And everybody uses it. Everybody. So I think it's the tech layer. Actually, I realized I thought we would have a little bit of a disparity. Maybe we don't have enough technology here versus India and other places. Having spent the whole week studying their system end-to-end detailed all the way in, we're better. We have more, not less, more. The thing that's missing is this spot. The conviction for merchants, which is value add, price, simplicity and consistency in acceptance. For consumers, it's all user experience, right? I have 3 apps that I use, or 4 apps that I use for payments. To make a QR payment, the experiences are wildly different. In India, it doesn't matter what you use, Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, whatever you use, it's exactly the same. One authentication, super fast, works the same way. And it's mandated. It's not a choice. And if anybody doesn't follow the mandate, the central bank will shut that bank down that minute for any business. Shut down. Not a warning. So I don't think we should, that's pretty strong. But I think we have a lot of things we can learn from those user experiences, the journey with the merchant. We can do those things here. So I came back super energized thinking, holy shit, it's within our reach. We can do this. I'm not sure if I can say that, but so you can redact that last part.
Cut it out for the recording later.
He said it, not me. It's just
you know
AI,
me.
AI afterwards.
You know me and my foul mouth, Gosh, Vincent.
So yeah, I mean we're behind. These are, I think, my hypothesis and the reason, and we're going to work on it.
Very cool. I guess it's like a recipe, right? You pick and choose what works in our country and implement whatever that we can see from other countries. And now, of course, I think the clearest benefit for me is that when I went to Terengganu, I can buy keropok leko with no cash. So that's a pretty good thing. And I guess, as your shirt says, don't use cash. Okay, fair enough. But I think anecdotally, although the numbers are a bit lower compared to some of our neighbors, we can see the difference as users over the years, how much wider the acceptance points are. And I anticipate, of course, as we move along, this becomes more and more ubiquitous. So I kind of want to circle back to some of the 20% that you talked about, right? You talked about bringing the cost down. You're talking about building the technology on your own, open data, making it more accessible to startups. And you also said that fintechs are kind of the key drivers and primary drivers of growth, right? And, in conversations with some of the payment startups that I have spoken to, the view is that the current cost of participating with PayNet is very, very restrictive for startups, and that kind of ability to participate is reserved to a few big players. So how do you respond to that? And can you elaborate on some of that 20% in a little bit more detail about how you're going to bring down the cost and make it more accessible to these startups?
Yeah, I think. So the good news, I'll start with the good news. The good news is PayNet, Bank Negara, the banks, the fintechs, our board, we all want the same thing. Right? That's actually, I say it as casually, but actually it's not always the case. Yeah. So it's actually pretty amazing that actually we're all aligned. We want prosperity for the country. We want payments to reach the underserved market and benefit from them. So now it's just a matter of how do we all agree on the right way to do it, right? So, we're not going to know all the answers, right? Like I said, every vision is going to be wrong. So we're going to try a few things. But I think because we all have good intentions, we are working towards those good things. So pricing, there's two components. One is on a per transaction basis, the pricing is high because we use expensive third-party vendors. When the system becomes in-house, that price will go down. That's just math and timing. But to change a system that processes 15 times the national GDP of payments every year, it's not a trivial undertaking. It's going to take some time. Yeah. Then there is sort of incentives and regulatory policy that aligns together to bring the cost to a reasonable level. What India did realize is that the zero MDR was a very bad idea. So now they're reversing it. But reversing it is much harder than doing it up front. Because zero MDR doesn't leave any money for R&D in the country. So whatever got to them to this point is no longer an option in the future. So the price has to be a moderated price. So it has to be the win-win-win market. And everybody's definition of win-win-win is a little different. And we're trying to put everybody together and have this dialogue. So it's not easy, trivial, but we're trying to get it. But people with good intentions will eventually come down to a better rationalized pricing where everybody has a pool to play with, a pool to profit with, a pool to invest in R&D. That's the other part of the pricing. And then there's pricing around our PayNet onboarding and things that we charge. And we had reasons for it because the requirement for a fintech to hold money, because it then becomes a strong regulated entity, they have to have a certain amount of heft to them to not put the system in danger. It's financial system, right? There's a systemic risk around that. So we charge basically to make sure the person has enough money and they can be protected and they're doing the right things. Having said that, if we create more of a pass-through structure of fintechs, where fintechs are just front end, and they don't want to hold the money, which is, by the way, how it is every other country except Malaysia, right? This concept of holding money is very here. I think the price will go down. So as long as we can say, yeah, you're not putting a risk to the national system, then the oversight, the compliance, all that stuff goes down, right? And if you can do that, then that's a lower cost. But you have to prove that you are not going to hurt the national system because that's unacceptable, right?
So you heard it here, folks. The prices will go down.
If Vincent.
I didn't hear the if. I don't know if you guys, but I didn't hear. I know my 30 minutes is up. Maybe just one quick follow-up question, and then we have some closing thoughts. And if the organizers allow, we might have some questions. I don't know if the organizers allow. Okay, we got green light for some questions. So, all of this, it all sounds great and good, right? So do you have a timeline in which you would like to commit to in terms of bringing down the cost for these fintechs?
So the per transaction cost, our internal timeline is 5 years. That's the system upgrade and fully in-house and the lower the cost. On the onboarding, I would speak completely out of turn. So I will not commit to anything, but it is an active project to do two things. There's a very active project. Actually, people sitting right in front of me, right? One, to significantly reduce the onboarding effort and time for fintechs, because sometimes it might take us almost 3 years, which is 2 rounds of funding. Where I was like, wow, that's amazing. So we're not going to have that anymore. Yeah. That we're working on very actively, and we will bring it down by magnitudes, not by increments, by magnitudes, right? My view on that is in 3 years, it should be self-onboarded instantly. But that's 3 years, right? We have a journey to get there. 3 years, we get there. Right? And then, and then the cost, if a fintech wants to just be a pass-through and build a front end and not pose a threat to the resiliency of the financial system, I think we can make the cost pretty much zero very, very fast within a year.
I'll check in with you in a year, 3 years, and 5 years.
Okay.
I think some of your
hold me accountable.
I will do that. I think some of your team might be uttering and cursing my name in silence.
They'll be uttering and cursing
what has
my
he
name.
done?
Not your name, my name.
Thankfully, right? Okay, great. So maybe we'll take one long question or 2 short questions. Is there any questions from the floor? Looking left. Looking center. Scanning to the back. Yes, the gentleman at the back. Please state your name, where you're from, and what's the question.
Hi, good morning. I'm Rishabh. I'm working as a director of product with FIS. It's Fintech basically. Thanks for organizing this. My main question is around the PayNet strategy that you just mentioned about the 5 or 6 points, right? As I can see on the board as well, it's about the do it now, FPX, IBG, etc. So that's mainly on the domestic. So what would be the strategy on enabling the cross-border payments?
What a wonderful question. Cross-border payments. That's another topic we haven't touched about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very active in pursuing cross-border. That's a Bank Negara priority as well, right? A very important one. So we have 3 corridors live: Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, in different ways. We are active conversations on about 3 or 4 more corridors. So you'll see some announcements coming up soon. And these are all bilateral deals. Then I think, and this is public knowledge, the governors of ASEAN 5 countries announced a joint effort to bring cross-border payments there. That's a live project that is staffed, funded, and operating as we speak, and they're working through this thing. And cross-border is very complex, right? It's not just a matter of turning on a switch somewhere else, because that doesn't do anything. A customer has no idea, I should try my thing here. So it's a very difficult long-term process. So we are working on bilateral relationships, a multilateral thing through this Project Nexus, that is a central bank-sponsored event or initiative. And then we're also working on a much more sort of ambitious global cross-border journey that is much more of a hush-hush thing. But the idea simply behind it, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, right? Because some of the people will be here who are involved in this. But the idea is, at some point, there has to be a viable alternative for domestic networks globally to connect without having to go through a lot of hoops into the one-offs. For every bilateral deal, if you imagine everybody's doing bilateral deals, 1,000 of these things make it a little bit complex. Because once anybody changes the system in their country, then does everybody have to adapt? And once you take technology. So I think the bilaterals are a stopgap to get our customers some benefits immediately. The multilateral will take it to the next level of convenience, but that'll take a few years for that to be reality. And then the global vision that I think we're working on a little bit below the radar is actually using new technology, using blockchain as well, and using a very different. So basically imagining if you were to build Visa today, how would you build it? But the sovereignty for each country and a point-to-point hop that is not run by any one sovereign nation, right? And that's kind of a bold thing, and you know, I mean, I would say nearly impossible thing, but if you don't try, we don't get lah.
Got a dream, right? And I think, you know, Project Nexus, I'm taking a bit of time over here, but Project Nexus is kind of a first mover around the world. I don't think many people realize that, and we're not proud enough of that as an ASEAN country, how we are pushing the way forward for some of these cross-border payment things. And, you know, today, I'm sure many of you in this room are aware, if you go to Singapore, you go to Thailand, where there's PayNow or PromptPay, you can use Boost, you can use Touch and Go or whatever e-wallet that's participating to be able to pay at those points as well. Now, maybe we'll take one last short question, and then we'll have some closing thoughts from Farhan.
On the cross, I think you're right. I think we don't take enough credit.
Yeah.
I think I would also say that is a credit to Bank Negara, who's been pushing this agenda heavier than most regulators to get it done. And that is some future thinking that we should be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think other countries and other regions will start to model themselves after. Even in fact, I was talking to some Hong Kong regulators. They were like, why didn't we do this? You know, they have the same real-time payment systems, but didn't connect to the other regions, right? So I think something to be proud of as ASEAN citizens. Any other country, any other questions from the right gentleman in the front there? State your name and your question, please, sir.
I think like e-wallet or payment is quite very competitive, right? You have a lot of big players, Touch and Go, whatever. How do you compete and how do you survive? What kind of strategies that your PayNets?
So how does PayNet compete?
How does PayNet compete? It's very competitive market in the e-wallet market.
So PayNet it does not compete. We are the infra. Touch and Go is a customer service boost. So are banks. So is anybody who wants to participate in the payment system. We don't compete. The question really becomes, how do you make money as an e-wallet? And again, I'll give you an example. When in the country of in India, right, when they went from 0.1 billion in monthly e-payment volume 5 years ago or 4 years ago to over 8 billion now. 0.1 to 8 billion, right, per month transactions. We did about 3.5 billion last year. Right? Of course, a much bigger country there. But their rise is all 95% of that growth, 95%. It's from 3 companies. PhonePe, Google Pay. PhonePe is 50%, Google Pay is about 35%, and 10% is Paytm. Yeah. 3 all fintechs, right, who have created all that growth in just a few years. And the MDR in India is mandated to be 0 on cards and do it now, and a QR. 0 MDR, 0 interchange. So no money to be made in the payment. Now, like I said, they're reversing it because maybe that was too extreme, right? But the idea was it forced people to say, how do I make money without making money on the payment? But if you use any of those apps, and somebody from Google sitting right here in the front row, and we can ask him to maybe volunteer his Google Pay app if he has one. But the experience is phenomenal, right? And when you create that experience, you create consistent daily usage with no friction. And when you create that friction, everything goes on your network. Everything. Your documents, your transactions, the smallest payment, your communication, everything goes there. Now you have the gold of the future, which is data. And once you have data, the monetizing method, by and large, is short-term merchant financing. Instant. Right? Then you have the normal games, right? The consumer financing, insurance, value-added services, digital locker services, whatever, blah, 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 blah. There's a host of things, but the cash cow there is short-term micro SME funding. Instant. And that's very lucrative, very viable, and actually powers the economy. So it creates a virtuous cycle where people keep getting more, they have more needs, they grow more, they do stuff. So I think there's many ways to make money, right? So scarcity is the mother of invention, right? You close the spigot, and I'll tell you a quick story. I worked for a very large bank, globally bank, and I was asked to run innovation for them, and they said, your budget is whatever, a few £100 million or whatever. I have given away the name, but anyway, 200 million pounds, and you have all these people. And I said, I can't innovate with 200 million pounds and a few hundred people. I need 1 million pounds and 5 people. Then I can innovate. I can't innovate with massive teams. That's no scarcity. We'll start building process, right? So scarcity is the key. So let's do it. There's many ways to make money here. And by the way, I will say, as an entrepreneur coming into Malaysia, literally every corner I look, I see opportunity. Literally every corner, I think, that's $1 billion business, that's $1 billion business, that's $1 billion business. And you know how many people have come to me with $1 billion business? Everybody comes to me and say, I have a $10 million business. I'm like, don't bother. Make it $1 billion business, then start working. It's too hard for 10 million.
I gotta sit more with you on this $1 billion ideas. But I guess, at the end of the day, PayNet is an enabler, not a competitor to these players. The day you become a competitor, you get a not so nice article from us, right? I do apologize that I ran over with time a bit. I think I got carried away with the conversation, but it was very engaging and fruitful. Before we wrap up the session, do you have any closing thoughts for the audience? Maybe a quick 1 minute.
I know. Look, I think we're at the next stage of growth. The past stage where I was not here was amazing for the country, right? What the team has built, like I said, maybe the best platform of its kind anywhere. Right? I don't take any credit for it. I was not here. I did not build it. There are people sitting in this room who built it. It's an amazing credit. It gives us a launch pad that is phenomenal. Right now, we're taking a different journey, a little bit of a next step of an evolution of any company. Every organism, every child, everything grows at different stages, needs different things. I think now is the time for the tech companies and the banks to come together to make some magic. And there's a lot of magic to be had. So please, I think what I'm encouraging is come share ideas with us. We are going to be much more open and receptive to that. Be open to the partnership option. And then, ask us to build things for you that allows you to capture the billion-dollar opportunities in the country. And hopefully you'll find us to be very receptive and helpful in that. We may not be able to do it immediately because we're a large moving ship, but the intent has changed. And I think hopefully you'll see this whole event if you come the next couple of days. This is the different PayNet, walking in a different way with a different mission in mind. So please join us on this.
So just one last note. The fintechs that want to work with you guys, how do they reach out?
Talk to Vincent Fong at I think most of you would know somebody at a PayNet's sort of channel, but of course we have a general email channel as well. You can apply from the website and send us queries. But if you do know people, there's people here today. If you have any interest, get cards from people. Anybody wearing the shirt is a PayNet staff or somebody from PayNet today. So feel free to reach out to people, make some connections, and go that way. Or you can send a query through the website, but that's generally the least efficient way.
Very good. And on that note, I can see the MC staring at me. Come on, man, you gotta wrap up. So
I'm very nice, Vincent.
I'm sure. So on that note, thank you, Farhan. I will be checking in year 1, year 3, year 5. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause.